They'll try to convince you that power is loud. That to be noticed, you must scream. That to be respected, you must dominate the room. That to be taken seriously, you must posture, bark orders, flash wealth, outshine others. But true power doesn't shout. It doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't wear itself on the outside. Real power is quiet. It moves like a shadow through the chaos, influencing everything without needing applause. It speaks through presence, not performance. It's the sword behind the curtain, not the fool dancing on stage. You want to be feared? Don't raise your voice. Build something no one can destroy. Because here's the truth they never taught you. The strongest men in history weren't the loudest. They were the ones who let the noise burn itself out, then stepped forward and rewrote the rules. Machiavelli once wrote that it's safer to be feared than loved, but he never said fear must come from cruelty. He meant fear that's earned through competence, clarity, and consequence. The kind of fear that whispers, "He doesn't need to speak. You already know." You don't gain this kind of presence by yelling over others. You gain it by becoming undeniable, through mastery, through control, through relentless inner work. Look around today. Social media is a battlefield of noise. Everyone's performing, selling an image, branding themselves as if performance equals value. But image fades. When the storm comes, it's the builders who survive, not the performers. Performers chase applause. Builders chase legacy. You want to be unshakable? Then stop playing the part and start becoming the force. There's a reason the samurai trained in silence. A reason the most dangerous men wore calm like armor. Because composure terrifies the insecure. The loud one in the room wants to be respected. The quiet one already is. Real power doesn't seek validation, it seeks leverage. It doesn't get reactive, it gets strategic. It doesn't show off, it prepares, plans, and strikes only when it matters. When you're powerful, you don't need to prove it. You embody it, and people feel it, even when you say nothing. But we live in a world addicted to attention. So they'll try to seduce you into the performance. They'll say, be more visible, speak louder, sell harder, compete for likes, for status, for relevance. Let them, because while they're building personas, you'll be building power. While they're perfecting their image, you'll be perfecting your craft. While they're chasing quick wins, you'll be laying foundations they'll never recover from. That's the art of power in the modern world, discipline in silence. Dominance in motion. You know who feared Napoleon? Not just his enemies, his own generals, his own allies. Because he wasn't just a man, he was a force of will. Not because he screamed, not because he postured, but because when he entered the room, strategy entered with him. He had vision, precision, ruthlessness forged in focus. He didn't talk about greatness. He built it, brick by brick, nation by nation. Real power isn't interested in noise. It's interested in control. And control is earned, not given. So stop performing. You weren't born to entertain. You were born to lead, to create, to shape reality. And you don't do that with noise. You do it with strategy, with restraint, with fire inside and steel behind the eyes. Look at any empire that endured. It was never built on flamboyance. It was built on clarity of purpose, execution in silence, and unwavering discipline. The Roman legions weren't loud, they were lethal. The pharaohs didn't flex, they commanded through monuments that still stand. Cleopatra didn't win with beauty alone, she mastered influence like a weapon. Power, when real, never has to scream. It simply is. So ask yourself, are you trying to be seen? Or are you building something worth seeing? Because one is fleeting, the other is immortal. Keep going? Every day you wake up, you're faced with a decision. Will I chase attention, or will I command respect? Will I perform for the crowd, or will I master the silence? Will I burn out in the spotlight, or build something in the dark that outlives me? That choice, though subtle, defines your life. The performer needs the world to clap. The builder doesn't need applause. He needs time, he needs space, he needs discipline. Because he knows the world will clap eventually, when he's finished creating something they can't ignore. There's an ancient law, the law of effortless authority. Those who possess it don't shout commands. Their presence speaks louder than their words. When a man walks in the room and says nothing, yet everyone notices, that's authority. When he doesn't brag, but everyone knows his reputation, that's legacy. And when he's attacked, but never breaks his posture, that's invincibility. That kind of power? It can't be faked. It can't be bought. It must be forged. But you cannot forge it if your identity is tied to performance. Performance is reactive. You're dancing to someone else's rhythm. You're playing the role you think they want. And in doing so, you become forgettable, replaceable, disposable. But when you build from within, build skills, build principles, build vision, you become sovereign. Not because you shout about it, but because everything you touch carries your signature. Your work speaks louder than your voice ever could. Let the others keep posting. Let them keep faking confidence, exaggerating wins, preaching success they haven't lived. Your job is not to be louder. Your job is to be better, more precise, more focused, more relentless behind the scenes. Because when you show up with something real, something that solves problems, something that creates, that multiplies, that transforms, you don't have to promote it. The world will find you. Because results echo further than words ever will. Sun Tzu said, "Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night. And when you move, fall like a thunderbolt." That's the power of strategy. You want to be powerful? Learn to withhold. Learn to listen more than you speak. Learn to see 10 moves ahead and keep them to yourself. That's how kings think. That's how empires are won. Not by showing your cards, but by controlling the game. Most people waste their strength trying to look strong. But looking strong and being strong are not the same. The man who needs to show his muscles often has no endurance. The man who brags about money often has none saved. The man who tells everyone he's in control is usually falling apart behind the curtain. True strength is invisible until it's tested. So let the world underestimate you. Let them think you're quiet, soft, passive. Then, when the time is right, build louder than they ever spoke. The ones who last don't need followers. They build systems, structures, movements. They create values so deep that it shifts culture, rewrites standards, and leaves a mark no one can erase. This isn't about being mysterious for the sake of mystery. It's about developing such control over yourself that mystery becomes the natural byproduct of your mastery. People talk too much. They reveal too much. They perform too much. Because they're insecure. The loudest are often the emptiest. The moment you understand that, you stop reacting to noise and start seeing through it. The critic yelling at you? He's scared. The man constantly flaunting his wins? He's compensating. The influencer addicted to likes? She's starving for identity. But you're playing the long game. You're not interested in attention. You're interested in influence, not applause, impact. That's the difference between the imitator and the initiator. The imitator performs. The initiator builds, and then lets the world watch. Because the world does not remember those who shouted the loudest. It remembers those who moved the earth in silence. Understand this. You are not here to be seen. You are here to become undeniable. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens through relentless commitment. Through choosing depth over decoration. Through rejecting the superficial and embracing the invisible weight of self-mastery. Power, real power, isn't about domination. It's about direction. It's not found in how many people you control, but in how fiercely you control yourself. Your emotions, your impulses, your time, your energy. You want to be feared like Caesar? Respected like Marcus Aurelius? Remembered like Da Vinci? Then stop performing and start producing. Because performance dies the second the lights go out. But what you build, if it's real, will outlive you. In every man, there is a builder and a performer. One builds kingdoms. The other builds illusions. The performer wants fast results. He's addicted to the dopamine of short-term praise. But the builder, he understands that creation is a war of attrition. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's hours alone, in the dark, with no recognition, just the grind of becoming. There's nothing sexy about discipline. It's repetition. It's boredom. It's sacrifice. But those who endure it quietly become kings while the performers burn out in the spotlight. Look at the world around you. You'll see people performing power, faking depth, mimicking leadership. And if you're not careful, you'll fall into the trap. You'll think if you don't post about your wins, they don't matter. You'll believe the lie that visibility equals value. But that's not power. That's vanity. And vanity is a weak substitute for legacy. You want to be remembered? Don't say more. Do more. Cleopatra didn't need to raise her voice. Her presence changed the course of empires. Napoleon didn't rule with noise, he ruled with calculated force. Miyamoto Musashi, the most feared samurai of all time, was known for his quiet discipline and lethal precision. What do they have in common? They built from within. They didn't demand respect, they commanded it by living with purpose, clarity, and ruthless self-direction. You want that? Then you must embrace the silence. You must love the stillness. You must build, alone, without applause, until your results are so powerful they can no longer be ignored. That's the paradox of real power. The quieter it is, the louder it echoes. So ask yourself, are you addicted to the noise? Or are you devoted to the process? Are you seduced by attention? Or are you obsessed with execution? Because the man who executes relentlessly in the dark eventually owns everything the performer was pretending to have. That's the law. You either perform for power, or you build the kind of power no one can take from you. And if you're still here, still listening, then something in you knows the truth. That all the noise you've been chasing, the validation, the praise, the spotlight, it's hollow, it fades, it's a high without a foundation. But the work, the craft, the relentless pursuit of mastery? That builds weight in your soul. That sharpens your mind like a blade. That turns you from a man who reacts to a force that moves mountains in silence. Let the others keep talking. Let them keep marketing their image. Your job is to become the real thing. Because in this world, authentic strength is rare, and that rarity makes it dangerous. You walk into a room without announcing yourself, and yet, everything shifts. Why? Because you've done the work. Because you carry the weight of discipline behind your eyes. Because you don't need to act powerful, you are. And people feel that. They don't know why they listen when you speak. They don't know why they respect your presence. But it's because you earned your gravity. You paid the price in sweat and silence. You built what they only pretend to be. We live in an age of performance. An age where people confuse visibility for value. But remember, the loudest room is often the weakest one. The man who truly knows himself doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't need to flex. He doesn't need to dominate others. He just executes. He builds quietly. He improves daily. He learns constantly. And eventually, the world has no choice but to take notice. Because the empire he built in the shadows casts a long shadow of its own. This is what they don't tell you. That silence is the companion of strength. That restraint is a weapon. That the most powerful men are often the most still. Because they are not performing. They are calculating. They are not competing for attention. They are constructing legacy. And when they move, they don't ask permission. So what are you building? Not what you're saying. Not what you're tweeting. Not what image you're curating. What are you actually creating? What systems are you setting in motion? What discipline are you reinforcing in your soul? What version of yourself are you quietly forging? Far from the noise? That's the only thing that will last. Because the spotlight burns out. The applause fades. But the man who built something real, he never has to chase influence. He becomes it. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting for the perfect timing. Start building, brick by brick, page by page, hour by hour. Because while others are distracted by the performance, you're preparing for the moment the stage collapses. And only the builders are left standing. The storm will come. It always does. And when it does, the performers will panic. But you'll remain unmoved. Because you've built your foundation not in applause, but in silence. And that silence? That's where the real power lives. And yes, continue we must. Because this path you've chosen? It isn't easy. It isn't glamorous. It won't get you the dopamine hits the performers chase like addicts. But it will give you something far more dangerous. Unshakable credibility. Internal dominance. Power that doesn't flicker in the wind, it carves through it. Let me be brutally clear with you. Most men will never get there. They'll get lost in the noise. They'll choose ego over evolution. They'll sell their souls for a few cheap moments of applause. And when the lights go out, they'll have nothing left but regret. But you have a choice. Right now. This moment. To go inward instead of outward. To build quietly instead of broadcasting loudly. To take the pain, the frustration, the loneliness, and turn it into fuel. That's the secret they'll never understand. That loneliness isn't a curse, it's a forge. It burns away the weak parts of you. It isolates you from the noise. And it gives you space to sharpen your edge in silence. Because when there's no one clapping, when there's no one watching, When there's nothing but your will and your vision. That's when you find out what you're really made of. Look at the greats. Not the ones trending now, but the ones who bent history. They all had one thing in common. They disappeared to build. Machiavelli was exiled. He wrote The Prince in silence. Napoleon was mocked. He studied war obsessively before ever leading men. Tesla was ridiculed. He toiled alone, building what others couldn't even imagine. Even the gods in mythology retreated before they returned to conquer. Why? Because silence is not weakness. It is preparation. It is insulation from the static of the crowd. It is where power incubates. So what if they don't see your work yet? So what if they doubt you? Good. Let them. Let them mock your silence, while you build the system that will one day own theirs. Because the moment you stop performing, you free yourself from the need to be accepted. And that freedom? That's where real power is born. You want to know what will separate you from 99% of people? It's not talent. It's not intelligence. It's not charisma. It's your ability to sit with the silence and build anyway. To keep showing up when it's hard. To put in the hours no one will ever see. To create things no one asked for, but everyone will need. And yes, it's going to get lonely. You will be misunderstood. You will be ignored. You will be doubted. But the builder keeps going. Because he knows. The vision is real even before the world sees it. The empire is real, even when it's still just blueprints on your desk and calluses on your hands. The man you're becoming is real, even when the mirror hasn't caught up yet. And soon, the silence will end, but not because you broke it. Because the world will. They'll come knocking, not with applause, but with awe, because what you built in the dark now casts a shadow over their entire illusion. You didn't scream. You didn't perform. You executed. And now? You own the room they thought you'd never enter. Let me take you to the final stretch, the climax of this transformation. Shall we finish what we started? Now listen carefully, because this is the part where everything either changes or repeats. This is where most men fall back into the cycle. Back into noise. Back into seeking permission, chasing relevance, begging the world to notice them. But not you. You're not here to be noticed. You're here to be undeniable. And that means silence must become your sanctuary. Not because you're hiding, but because you're forging. You are becoming the man who moves without announcing, speaks only when necessary, and dominates, not through volume, but through vision. A man who doesn't need to prove he's powerful. Because power radiates from the way he carries himself. From the discipline in his eyes. From the consistency in his actions. From the empire he's building. Brick by relentless brick. And make no mistake, what you build in silence will one day echo across time. They'll ask how you did it. How you came from nowhere. How you moved with such force without ever making noise. And you'll just smile. Because while they were performing, you were preparing. While they were clapping for themselves, you were constructing a reality they now have to live in. You became undeniable. Because you stopped chasing power? And started building it. Understand this. Real power doesn't roar. It doesn't seek permission. It doesn't explain itself. Real power is quiet. It's the storm that forms on the horizon while the world sleeps. It's the weapon that's never drawn unless necessary. It's the man who walks alone into the fire. Because he built himself to withstand it. This is your path now. Not to talk. Not to perform. Not to impress. But to build. To create. To master. To sharpen your soul so dangerously that the world cannot ignore it, even if you say nothing. Because eventually, silence becomes so loud, it silences everything else. Now go. Not with a scream, but with stillness. Not with ego, but with precision. Not with empty ambition, but with purpose crafted in the fire of discipline. Build your empire. In silence. In strength. In truth. And when it is done, let the world speak your name, while you simply keep building the next one.